move on.
Mm.
This webinar is brought to you by Evaluate. Evaluate is the evaluation hub for the Advanced Technological Education program. We work towards an ATE community in which evaluation is valued, systematic, and used to improve the education of technicians in high tech fields. We do this through engaging project leaders and evaluators with information, expertise, and tools to advance high quality evaluation. The slides from this webinar are already on our website, along with several other resources. You'll see the handouts and the slides right now. You can also download the resources by following the link on the right side of your screen. And we will share this recording with you directly through email within a couple of days. So that will be sent right to you. I'm Samantha Hooker. I'll be the moderator for today's webinar. Brianna Hook Singletary and Lissa Wilson Betcho will be our presenters today. We all work with Evaluate, which is located in the Evaluation Center at Western Michigan University. We'd like to recognize our Evaluate team who's worked behind the scenes to help bring you this webinar. Maureen Green, Kelly Robinson, Lori Wingate, Megan Lopez, Erica Sturgis, and Archer Fox Lee Easton. This webinar is designed for individuals funded by the NSF's Advanced Technological Education Program, or ATE for short. The ATE program is focused on improving technician education, mainly through two-year colleges. It funds projects in high-tech areas like advanced manufacturing, engineering technologies, IT, nanotechnologies, and more. Before we dive in, we do like to acknowledge that while we are funded by NSF, we do not speak for them. So the content in this workshop reflects our views and not necessarily those of NSF. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to our presenters.
Thanks for kicking us off, Samantha. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Lissa, and I am really grateful to be here with my colleague, Brianna, to talk to you about strategies for qualitative analysis. So I'm going to go ahead and turn our cameras off for now so you can focus on the slides, but we will go ahead and turn them back on during our question and answer breaks. So, over the next hour, we want to welcome you to this webinar and invite you to participate through the chat box on the right side of your screen. So we'll have a few interactive opportunities where we'll ask you some questions, and then, of course, some time for you to ask us questions. We're going to start off today by grounding everyone in what we mean by qualitative evaluation. Specifically, we're going to focus in on the analysis phase. So we're going to share some practical strategies on how you can speed up the analysis of qualitative data to provide meaningful information back to the project team in an efficient manner. Some of you might already have asked this in your head, but can AI just do the analysis for you? Well, we'll certainly talk about how you can use new technology in this process and what to consider if you do. And we're going to have two question and answer breaks during today's webinar, one in the middle and then one at the end. But feel free to enter any questions that you have in the chat box at any time throughout the webinar. Samantha and Maureen are going to be on the lookout to make note of those incoming questions to ask later. So take a minute to look at this picture of a group of students in a classroom. Each brings their own background, experiences, and perspectives. Quantitative data or numbers might tell us how many students are in the room, their grades or attendance rates, but there's a deeper story that numbers alone can't capture. This is really where qualitative evaluation shines. It can help us understand why these students engaged the way they did, how their unique experiences were shaped by their learning, and what challenges or successes they faced that go beyond those statistics. By exploring these stories, we gain insights into the complexities of their experiences and can better address their needs. But we know we don't have to convince you about the importance of qualitative evaluation. In fact, most ATE evaluators are already using qualitative methods to collect data in their evaluations. So, in a recent survey of ATE evaluators, 60% indicated that they employ focus groups, while 70% are using observations and 88% indicate that they employ that they conduct interviews. An even higher percent of evaluators use surveys to evaluate AT projects. So surveys they tend to be quantitative, but they can also have those open-ended questions that result in the need to make meaning from some type of qualitative analysis. So, this pattern of using qualitative methods really holds true for many in ATE as well as other STEM education programs and even other types of program evaluations. Many evaluators are drawn towards mixed methods given the exploratory and explanatory nature of combining multiple types of data. So we know that you're collecting qualitative data, and you might find yourself at the beginning of the analysis phase, staring at your computer with multiple audio files, transcripts, notes, and thinking, okay, now what? Well, we really hope that we can help turn that moment of stress into a moment of enjoyment by sharing practical strategies for you to approach the analysis of your qualitative data in a way that will feel organized and manageable. So, before we talk about these strategies for rapid qualitative analysis, we want to make sure that everyone starts with a strong foundation of what we mean when we say qualitative analysis. So, qualitative data analysis is a structured yet flexible process that involves several key stages. These stages allow evaluators to systematically interpret and make sense of qualitative data. So once you've collected your qualitative data, the first step is going to be to clean and organize this data. This helps to ensure that the qualitative data is well managed, which then strengthens the accuracy and findings and reliability of the findings. In the next step, you might group data into related topics. This might mean grouping responses by evaluation question or by purpose, but taking the time to group data can help to maintain the focus on the evaluation questions and facilitate subsequent cycles of analysis. While there are multiple approaches to qualitative analysis, most will then move on to some form of open or initial coding. The coding process involves closely examining the data to identify key concepts, patterns, or themes that will emerge. The evaluation team would then begin to look across responses to identify larger patterns and themes. This process collapses codes from that initial open coding phase. In the final steps, the identified patterns and themes should come together to answer the evaluation questions and to inform recommendations for the project. We've purposely visualized this process in kind of a zigzag line, recognizing that the process of qualitative analysis is rarely straightforward and often requires a lot of recursive thinking and revisiting of the transcripts. While this process can seem messy to some, it's important to keep detailed notes about your process and justify connections to make your findings as transparent as possible. So, there are two major approaches to qualitative analysis that are helpful to know. The first is an inductive approach to coding. So, this approach is particularly useful when you're exploring new responses or maybe a new project. In this approach, you first ground yourself in the data, then you group information into themes, and then you're developing codes. An inductive approach is often used in the first year of an evaluation when you're not sure how people are going to answer or when you're trying to build a reliable theory of change. A deductive approach is useful when you already have an existing theory of change and you're looking to confirm an existing explanation. So, in this approach, you actually start with a list of existing codes and then you find excerpts in the text that fit those codes. So, using a deductive approach is often used in evaluations where you're testing a theory of change or if you have an idea of what respondents will say. All right, so I want to pause here because I want to hear from you and your experiences with qualitative data. So we have this chat question that you can answer using the chat box on the right side of your screen. But our question is, what has been the most challenging aspect of analyzing qualitative data in your experience? What's been the most challenging aspect of analyzing qualitative data? Yeah, so I'm seeing a lot like Emily, Rebecca, Cynthia, and Linda. Right off the bat, say time, right? It just requires a lot of time. Anne says there's so much of it, right? Michael talks about intercoder reliability. Absolutely. Emma says the time and the inconsistencies in the process. Yeah, Lynn agrees the large amount of data. Cynthia says data cleaning. Richard says the flexibility of the answers. John says staying organized is so important in qualitative analysis. Vicky says getting responses can be tricky. Jerica, running focus groups or interviews efficiently and comfortably for participants. Yeah, I appreciate that you're thinking about that experience for the people being interviewed. Joe says sharing a story without writing an entire novel. Absolutely. Eduardo, when time and resources are limited. Yeah, absolutely. I am right there with all of you. And so I think when it comes to evaluation, qualitative evaluation as a whole process, we could have a whole series of webinars on all of the different challenges that there are and strategies to affect them. But I am excited to invite Brianna on to really talk about strategies for rapid qualitative analysis.
Thank you, Alyssa. So now that we reviewed some of the basic fundamentals of qualitative analysis, I'm going to introduce an approach using evaluation that allows us to quickly gather and analyze data without sacrificing research quality. This approach is called rapid qualitative analysis. So what exactly is rapid qualitative analysis, or RQA for short? At its core, RQA is a systematic yet efficient way to understand people's experiences and stories. Now, something really important to clarify is that rapid does not mean rushed. Although RQA is done within shorter time frames, it maintains a structured approach to data collection and analysis, allowing us to uncover meaningful patterns in responses, capturing the essence of participants' perspectives without compromising rigor. Through RQA, we can make timely and relevant program adjustments, share findings with key evaluation participants sooner, and apply insights when they can have the most impact. This is especially valuable in fields like workforce development or education, where responding to evolving needs can significantly benefit individuals and communities. Now that we have a basic understanding of what RQA aims to do, let's talk about some practical RQA time-saving strategies that can help make your project evaluations more efficient. In this section, I'll share some time-saving tips like using interview summaries and audio clips instead of full transcriptions, implementing structured frameworks for streamlined rapid analysis, creating and using data reduction tables to organize key insights. And the last tip I'll share is how deductive coding techniques can help focus your data analysis. So to start, we're just going to introduce some rapid alternatives to verbatim transcripts, like interview summaries and audio clips. Interview summary notes are often taken during or right after the interview. These notes focus on capturing the main points, themes, and key insights from each conversation. Interview summaries can look like the document shown here. Evaluators often rely on interview protocols to guide their summary notes, ensuring that key themes and interviews are consistently captured across interviews. This focus on essential information streamlines the process, allowing evaluators and project teams to quickly uncover insights that genuinely reflect participant voices. The big advantage here is that this approach doesn't require a full written transcript, which can be time consuming to create. So instead of spending hours transcribing every word, we're focused on documenting only the essential information. However, there are some limitations to using interview summaries instead of verbatim transcripts. Relying too heavily on protocols can sometimes lead to overlooking the nuance or context behind certain responses, which could be important for a deeper understanding of the data. Also, since interview summary notes depend on someone actively taking notes during the interview, there's always a risk that some context or details may be overlooked or lost in translation. So while this approach is efficient, it's important to stay flexible and open to revisiting the data based on the needs of your project. Another effective strategy is to work directly from audio recordings instead of full transcripts. By listening for moments that capture relevant experiences, you can maintain the original voice and tone of participants. Key points or impactful quotes can be noted as needed, which saves time while preserving the depth of the data. However, there are some limitations as this approach requires careful listening, and you might miss subtle details or nuances that a full transcript could reveal. It also relies on audio quality, which can sometimes be a challenge, especially if the recording isn't as clear as we hoped. There are several structured frameworks available for rapid qualitative analysis, and the choice depends on the evaluator's specific needs and resources. Structure frameworks help organize data consistently, streamline the analysis process, and maintain the quality and rigor essential for identifying key findings and insights effectively. One structured approach is the Consolidated Framework for Implementation Research, or CFIR. It's a valuable tool for understanding how a program or intervention is implemented and identifying the factors that impact its success. It can be applied in both rapid and traditional evaluation qualitative analysis contexts. However, in rapid settings, it is commonly used with interview notes, whereas in traditional contexts, full transcripts will be used. CFIR utilizes 5 domains that often influence how well a program works. These domains come from different fields like psychology and sociology, giving a broad view of what might affect implementation. These domains include innovation, which refers to the actual thing being implemented, like a program or a service. The outer setting domain looks at the bigger environment around the program, such as factors in the school district, healthcare system, or state level policies. Next, the inner setting focuses on the immediate environment where the program is happening, like a specific school department or even individual classroom units. The individual's domain, which is about the people, their roles, skills, and attitudes, and how this affects the program's progress. And finally, the implementation process domain examines the specific steps and strategies used to roll out the program successfully. These CFIR domains are usually defined before starting the evaluation, which helps guide both the data collection and analysis process. Defining these domains early helps structure data analysis, making it efficient and enabling evaluators to focus on key factors affecting implementation. The image on the screen shows a CFIR codebook that you can adjust to fit your project needs. This codebook is developed using codes from the predefined domain areas I mentioned earlier, that you would establish prior to data collection. This helps, again, guide your rapid evaluation by focusing on the most critical components of implementation. However, a limitation of CFIR is that with its unique focus on program implementation, it may overlook deeper issues such as long-term sustainability, external impacts, or overall project effectiveness. This narrow scope could lead to an incomplete understanding of the factors influencing the program's success or failure. Data reduction tables are another method used with rapid qualitative analysis approaches. Data reduction tables help organize, condense, and summarize large amounts of information into manageable, meaningful segments, making it easier to spot key themes and findings. The rigorous and accelerated data reduction radar rapid approach uses tables and spreadsheets in everyday software such as Word or Excel to build detailed data tables. These tables are refined through several rounds to make them shorter and more focused. The data reduction process helps turn large amounts of data into clear, concise summaries. Through each round, the tables become more concise, allowing raw textual data to be converted into a format that's much easier to manage and interpret. The end result is an efficient, user-friendly data table that captures the core insights while discarding unnecessary detail and making the data both manageable and actionable. As most of us know, structured coding approaches can also help to speed up the analysis process in rapid approaches. So when there's a need to make sense of large amounts of qualitative data quickly, the choice of coding method becomes really important. One method frequently used in rapid approaches is deductive coding. Deductive approaches to analysis are commonly used in rapid evaluations because they allow data to be organized quickly into preset categories or themes. As Lissa mentioned earlier when discussing qualitative analysis approaches, deductive coding is built around predefined codes. By starting with these codes, it's easier to identify relevant patterns right away without having to sort through all of the data from the ground up. A deductive codebook is a key tool in this approach. It serves as a guide listing all the preset codes or categories that will be applied to the data. Each code is defined in advance based on a specific theme, such as barriers to implementation or participant satisfaction. This approach makes the analysis more efficient and focused, which is particularly helpful when fast findings are needed. However, one limitation of this approach is that it may narrow the scope of analysis, potentially overlooking unexpected insights or emergent themes that don't fit neatly into the predefined codes. This can result in missing some of the richness or the nuance in the data. RITA, or rapid identification of themes from audio, is a deductive analysis method that uses preset codes to quickly identify themes in time audio segments. It's an efficient approach that captures key insights while preserving nonverbal cues like tone and mood, which are often lost in transcripts. Here is an example of what a completed RITA coding sheet looks like. The codes and subcodes are listed, and the analyst has marked each time segment where a theme appears using a plus sign for a positive association, a minus sign for a negative association, and a 0 for a neutral or unclear connection to the theme. The coding sheet helps organize the data efficiently, showing where specific themes occur across the audio. By using a deductive approach to coding, we can systematically capture important insights while keeping the process focused and consistent. The Hamilton Rapid Qualitative Analysis, developed by Dr. Allison Hamilton, a research health scientist, is another RQA approach that uses deductive analysis. Based on the principles of rapid assessment process, the Hamilton RQA is a team-based method that emphasizes triangulation, iterative analysis, and ongoing data collection to quickly understand a situation from participants' perspectives. The Hamilton RQA process involves categorizing data using preset domains aligned with interview questions. For example, a question about challenges participants face might use a domain like barriers to implementation. These domains should remain neutral, describing the topic without influencing the analysis to ensure they align with the intended focus area. A template is then used to summarize the responses with the process tested to ensure it captures the necessary information effectively. The summaries are then placed in a table, making it easy to compare responses and spot patterns. Hamilton RQA helps teams analyze data efficiently while staying organized and consistent. So this brings us to our first knowledge check. Here, we ask, as an evaluator using rapid qualitative approaches, which specific approach might you choose to streamline and expedite your data analysis process? Your response choices are A, creating data reduction tables to organize and condense key themes and insights across interviews. B, conducting in-depth line-by-line coding of full interview transcripts. Or C, performing a comprehensive literature review before beginning data analysis. I'm going to remain quiet for a minute for you to read the responses again and select your option. When you're ready, please respond to the poll that should pop up on the right side of the screen. Give a couple more moments. Oh, look. All right. So For those of you who selected A, you are correct. As we discussed, data reduction tables are adopted by several rapid qualitative analysis approaches. These tables help organize, condense, and summarize large amounts of information into manageable, meaningful segments, allowing for an expedited analysis of qualitative data. Let's pause to see what you're thinking. I'm going to pass it back to Samantha to share some of the questions you've asked in the chat.
Hi, everybody. I don't have any questions I've tagged so far. I do have a couple of things that Lissa is going to address in her next section. So if you're like, wait, I did kind of have a thought, we will go ahead and handle that. But if you have any questions, you can pop them into the chat and we can go ahead and address them. I know that was a lot of great information, so I'll give you a minute. Okay. All right. Brianna, Emily would like to know, how do you capture and use quotes when using interview summary notes?
Emily, I think that is a great question. I understand that that can be challenging when you're doing interview summary notes. Sometimes, in my experience, what will be a good method is noting the time of a good quote, and then you can go back if needed, and capturing as much as you can throughout the interview. I'm not sure if in Liz's experience, she has used anything else to capture quotes in interview summary notes, but those are my go-to.
Yeah, I think that's a great strategy. I would also push back a little bit to say that there are situations in which you can report meaningful findings from qualitative data without having those salient quotes. I know it is really helpful, but depending on what you're trying to do and how succinct you're trying to communicate those findings and how quickly you're trying to turn around those findings, it just may not be something that you do in that particular evaluation.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and Brianna, how did you create the code book? And was it based on literature review or quickly go through transcripts and then develop an initial one?
Okay. Um, Thank you for that question. For this code book that we created this time, the code book was created based off of what we were aiming to ask in the interview. A lot of times, uh, the code book, this is a deductive code book, so you come in with the codes initially. So there's normally a more iterative process where you would like test the codes among the group of people who are using the deductive code book. But for this example that I showed here, it was based off of a lot of the evaluation questions that were used. I mean, the interview questions that were used.
Great, thank you.
I think I just want to add that in evaluations, another really rich place to look if you are going to create a deductive coding scheme is the program logic model or theory of change. To really understand what was expected and how things were expected to change can really inform that coding structure.
Okay, Lissa, what processes or structures can be put into place to ensure implicit biases are not integrated into the RQAs, particularly the deductive approaches?
Absolutely, Julia. It's a really good question. And I know that there was some other question around bias and these different approaches in the chat as well. I think qualitative evaluation is always a process of balancing and trade-offs, right? And so there are elements you can put into place like calculating some type of inter-rater reliability coding, having some sort of principles set down that you want to make sure your evaluation process follows, right? But there is that trade-off of making sure that you are being open and acknowledging what assumptions, what perspectives may be influencing the final findings. So I think it's just really important while you're in any process of qualitative analysis, you're taking a lot of notes about how you're getting to those findings so you can be really transparent in the logical argument that you present in your findings. Brianna, what else would you add to that?
I just think that it's important to be upfront with who you are as the evaluator or the researcher doing the analysis and addressing those before going in, like being aware of those biases that you may bring inside of the process so that while you're going through the process, you are able to check your biases. And that is what I find to be very helpful.
Agreed.
Okay, Candia was wondering if there was an example project to understand how to apply these structures and processes.
Kendaya, I would actually suggest that you and anyone else interested in this topic was actually the same topic that we did an in-depth 3-hour workshop at the ATEPI conference. And during that workshop, we really had the time to dive into a case example of what this looked like and have participants really listen to transcripts or do the Hamilton tables. And all of that information is actually still on Evaluate's website. So if you want to go read that case study, we have mock interviews. You can use the tables. So you could actually walk through all of those yourself. So we'll make sure to put a direct link to those materials in the chat.
Great, thank you. And that kind of segues into we had a couple of questions about how much training is needed to use one of these techniques and where is that training available. So we'll go ahead and add that link so that you can see what Evaluate did in the pre-conference workshop. But is there any other ideas about how much training is needed or where to find training?
Um, there's a lot of information about these approaches that's available online, but there's no per se, I would say, target number of training. I think it's just important that whoever is using the framework familiarizes themselves and the whole team that they're working with on like how does this process work, and what are the specifics and nuances to each of these different frameworks or approaches.
Thank you. Okay, Lisa. Lena's wondering how research quality fits with this. Prolonged engagement with the data is a long held approach for improving quality of analysis. Any thoughts?
Yeah. I know that's a really great question. You even cite Lincoln and Guba in there, right? So, for those who aren't familiar with Lincoln and Guba, they were very much a constructivist oriented perspective to evaluation and really feeling that you needed to immerse yourself to really sit in the data. You needed that long time. And even in reports, that you needed to write these really thick, rich case studies. And that is how true learning would be gained from the interest holders reading those evaluation reports. So I want to acknowledge that that kind of qualitative evaluation, that truly time intensive constructivist at its core approach, is a bit different than the type of more rapid responsive feedback loop type of evaluation that we're talking about, right? And I don't think it's a black and white spectrum. I think that there are shades of gray in between. So I think being really clear about the needs of the project that you're serving, your resources, right? So that's time and money constraints to really find what the right balance is for you. And so, what we really want to do through this webinar is give you some tools, some ideas that you can look into further to find that right balance between speed and that quality. I think you could do speed and quality, but that speed and that more rich, descriptive qualitative analysis. Yes, Mary, thank you so much. The fit for purpose is like the exact correct phrase. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Um, and Lisa, I'm going to pose this one to you because I think you might cover it in your next section. To have a good summary notes during interviews, you have to be a good note taker. Are there tools you use or strategies you can suggest?
Yes. I actually do think that if you're going to have a member of your team take notes, there are like some like good strategies out there to understand like what you're taking notes about so that you're not getting that bias, that decision of what to include or what not to include. But I think this is also a really wonderful segue to our next section talking about AI, because AI could also be your note taker. So I know we have other questions in the chat, but we do have one more question break at the end. So let's go ahead and talk about AI for a little bit. So again, thank you for all of those questions. So, Brianna really focused on frameworks and strategies that can speed up the qualitative analysis process. But in an age where generative AI is advancing quickly, we couldn't talk about how to make qualitative analysis faster and more efficient without at least acknowledging how AI fits into this conversation. So many of you might already be playing around with tools such as ChatGPT, Copilot, Claude, or Perplexity. So we want to start off this conversation by just asking you, so what are you already doing? So using the chat box on the right side of your screen, let us know how you have been using AI assisted technology to support your qualitative analysis. Or maybe if you have been using AI assisted technology. Yeah, so Anne says that she's been using Claude. Catherine says for transcription, absolutely. We're going to talk about that. Otter AI for note taking. Yeah, software like Atlas TI has started to really integrate AI tools in there. Rebecca says ChatGPT for identifying themes and written responses. Yeah, AI terrifies me. I totally understand. Yes, we're going to talk about that. Suyun says Otter produced transcripts and summaries. Michael's another Claude preference. Can't I? Yeah, absolutely. The AI tools have really been starting to incorporate into existing platforms, whether that's a qualitative analysis software like MaxQDA or InVivo. Um, yeah, absolutely. And Michelle says hesitant. Absolutely. Yeah, great. So let's talk about a little bit of this, right? So, AI chatbots are software programs powered by artificial intelligence that can engage in natural language conversations with users. They work by processing large amounts of text data and learning patterns of language to generate human like responses. So, ChatGPT, for example, is built on a model called a large language model, which has been trained on a diverse data set, including books, articles, and websites. So these chatbots function by using advanced techniques like machine learning and deep neural networks to understand context, generate coherent responses, and even perform specific tasks, such as summarizing, coding, or analyzing text. So they can really process qualitative data, things like interview transcripts, open ended survey responses, by quickly identifying themes, generating those summaries, and organizing information on patterns. So, before using AI tools, here are some things to consider. So, first, think about AI as your assistant. It's a great thought partner, but it certainly cannot replace you. AI really lacks context, right? It only has the data and the information that you give it. And often we don't realize that small pieces of information really play an important part in identifying patterns or making meaning out of information. AI needs supervision. I am sure that you've all heard of chatbots who have told users how dinosaurs built a civilization, or to put glue on pizza, or how many rocks to eat a day. AI tools are getting better at not hallucinating, but it's still something to be aware of. AI isn't really good at the why questions. It's good at spotting patterns, but not understanding human motivations behind those behaviors. Sometimes the most meaningful part of evaluations are the why questions. AI is biased, right? So sometimes we think that AI is going to come and be that kind of really objective observer, but these chatbots were built and trained by humans. So it exacerbates human error that's just already there. And not all AI data security is made equal. So make sure to consider things like data privacy and confidentiality, data storage and retention policies, and compliance with legal and ethical standards. Many AI tools are hosted on external servers, meaning that sensitive data could be exposed to third party groups. So if you upload interview transcripts, those transcripts are going outside of your computer, right? They're going somewhere else, and you never know who might have access to that. So when it comes to IRB privacy concerns, but there's also some concerns of intellectual property here as well. If you're putting in information that's considered novel or new, certain AI chatbots actually use um, inputted response to train their chatbots, right? So you may tell it something and it may answer someone else's question using what you told it. I think that's how we got dinosaur civilizations. So, we're going to talk about 5 different ways to consider integrating AI assisted technology to support analyzing qualitative data. So, AI assisted note taking, transcriptions, data organization, coding, and then exploration of transcripts. So, the first strategy involves using an AI assistant to take notes during your interviews or focus groups. So, chatbots can listen into your meeting and take live notes, really highlighting things like key takeaways, recurring patterns, or even follow up questions. So, you can ask the AI tool to organize the notes, how you'd like to facilitate your later analysis. So this can be a really useful tool for member checking. So when you're going to send notes of an interview back to a participant to confirm their responses were accurately recorded. So I know a number of you talked about using Otter AI, but some other softwares, I think Zoom and Teams have actually started integrating this, but some that are more oriented towards research or evaluation might be Marvin, Avoma, or Fathom. So, a second strategy is to have AI assist in the creation of transcripts from the audio files. I think that a lot of people may have already been using this without realizing that AI was speeding things up. But the turnaround time, quality, and price of AI assisted transcripts really vary across platforms. But at the end of the day, they're much faster and cheaper than human transcribers. So I personally use rev.com for most of my work. They can do a combination of AI assisted transcripts with a human review. And I think this really just provides clean and reliable transcripts. But some other places to consider might be MeetGeek, Sonics, or Otter AI. Another way AI technology can support your qualitative analysis is in the data organization stage. So, AI tools can help categorize responses by interview question or by topic to make analysis easier and faster. The old school way of doing this would involve a lot of cut and paste of text segments across various documents. And as Kintai already mentioned in the chat, we've seen a lot of integration of this kind of AI tools into existing qualitative analysis softwares like MaxQDA or NVivo. So you can actually do this kind of data organization or reorganization in Chatbox like Copilot. So for those of you who haven't yet really played around with generative I want to show you some real examples of trying these techniques out on some mock interview data. So you can see here that I chose Copilot, which is by Microsoft here. And really, my reason for choosing this was because my university, where we're located at, provides access to Copilot with the enterprise level data protection, meaning that none of my inputs or responses are being shared beyond me or my computer. So I started by uploading my 2 interview transcripts. And then I asked Copilot to reorganize the responses in both transcripts by the original question asked by the evaluator. I specified the format I wanted the output with the questions bolded and the responses bulleted. Almost immediately, Copilot already began to provide these reorganized responses. So you can see that here. And if I scroll down, you can see that the responses continue to be organized by topic and respondent. So AI can do all these other things, but can they actually do the coding for you? Well, yes and no. So studies have been conducted that actually compare AI assisted coding to human coding. And they've shown that AI models are pretty decent at the initial round of coding, but they're not as good at pointing to the bigger picture that unites those specific codes. So, if you're interested in taking this route, your AI assistant might be okay at the first round of coding, but expect to take a much heavier hand in later rounds of coding and theming. Again, some tools that are available in this area include traditional qualitative platforms like MaxQDA or NVivo, and some newer tools, things like Insight 7 and Delve. So let's take a look at what this could look like in Copilot. So I entered my prompt into the chat as before. I said, based on these interviews, developed a detailed thematic analysis report. Highlight key patterns, insights, and emerging trends to inform decision making processes. I also told it to base its responses strictly on the provided information and don't add any external information. This ensures that Copilot sticks to the script, literally, and doesn't include information that it might find elsewhere on the internet. So here's the response that it gave me. So you can see that it's organized around key themes and patterns. And if I scroll down, you can see that it even added sub themes here, right? So themes like current and emerging needs. If I scroll even further, there's a section on insights and recommendations. And finally, it even wrote a conclusion for me. So from here, I could go back and I could ask Copilot to refine things, I could add details, or I can change the items as it makes sense to my context. But this is a decent first round of pulling patterns from interviews transcripts, and it took me less than a minute. So I haven't heard much about this, but an interesting strategy I'd like to investigate more is the idea of AI assisted exploration of transcripts. So I know that as a consumer of evaluation for the Evaluate project, I often have a lot of emergent questions that weren't originally discussed as part of the evaluation report. And being able to access an AI chatbot that could pull from the various transcripts would allow me to ask questions as they occur to me, right? So I could go dig deeper into the evaluation data. Something like this could be supported on almost any of these generative AI chatbots. So, just some to consider, right? Microsoft's Copilot, Claude, Perplexity, or ChatGPT. So, what might this look like, right? So, consumers of an evaluation, they might want to go back to the data and ask additional questions like, what are the most common suggestions participants made for improving the program? So they could ask that question and immediately get a response that wasn't originally within the scope of the evaluation. Or maybe they want to summarize what industry partners said about students' problem solving skills, right? So here I asked, summarize what they said about problem solving skills. So using these kinds of AI tools has the potential to further engage consumers in really exploring this data and ensuring that they get the most out of their evaluation findings. So as we close this section, I would like to just take a quick temperature check. So what do you think about using this kind of AI assisted technology to support your qualitative analysis? Are you excited and ready to jump in? Are you hesitant but want to learn more? Or would you rather just stick with humans for the time being? So the poll will appear on the right side of your screen in the poll tab. So I see answers kind of flooding in. And right now we're in between excited and ready and hesitant but want to learn more. Absolutely. Honestly, I think that's where I am. Like it feels exciting, but I have lots of questions. I guess I always have lots of questions. So we are approaching our final question break. So make sure to type any of the questions you have in the chat box. But I'm going to invite Brianna back to talk about some major takeaways from today.
Thank you again, Lissa. As we reach our final question break today, here are some of the main things that we hope you walk away with. First, qualitative analysis can add depth and meaning to your evaluation findings. Through qualitative analysis, evaluators can understand the why, how, and what that go beyond statistics or traditional quantitative measures. Next, rapid qualitative analysis enables evaluators to meet project teams' needs by providing timely, structured insights that address urgent concerns and tight deadlines. Finally, AI can be an effective assistant that can be used throughout the analysis process. However, it's important to remember, as Lisa mentioned earlier, that it can never replace the role of the project evaluator in the analysis process. I really hope that you enjoyed this webinar, and we thank you for taking time out of your schedule to be here today. I'm going to hand it back over to Samantha to share the questions you've been asking in the chat.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. Brianna, are there any situations where you absolutely wouldn't use RQA?
Uh, that is a great question again. My initial reaction is like research or like an evaluation where I'm really trying to gain that deep nuance and I have time to do so. So that would be a situation where I wouldn't necessarily use rapid methods um, if I have that additional time.
Great. Thank you. Okay. Lissa, for those learning evaluation for the first time, would you recommend they learn the evaluation fundamentals first before using RQA techniques, or is it fine for those who are new to dive right into that?
Good question. It's funny. I feel like I asked myself this a lot, this idea of with processes and practices really evolving, do you have to learn it the way kind of we originally learned it first and then shift to this new way of thinking or doing? Or can you just jump to that new way of thinking or doing? I think to answer your specific question, I would want to know more about what you meant by evaluation fundamentals, right? Because I don't necessarily think that you need to learn traditional qualitative analysis, something like a grounded theory approach, before you learn or try out more rapid qualitative analysis techniques. But I do think that, I mean, truly foundational concepts, things like understanding the evaluation standards and what that really means, and what is a high quality evaluation, and how can you make sure that you are providing valid and trustworthy findings. I do think that that is important to make sure that in any type of rapid strategy that you employ, you're not kind of cutting corners or um, coming to conclusions that you wouldn't want to.
Great, thank you. And we do have a couple questions left. So I just want to point out that we do have a little feedback box that might have popped up in the corner. So we do hope that you'll take a minute to fill that out. Your feedback really does mean a lot to us. We do love evaluation, and we will use that as we create, further webinars and resources. Okay, so getting back to the question, we do have a couple of questions about how are you approaching the use of AI with clients um, from an ethical and practical standpoint?
Transparency, transparency, transparency. Everything from asking clients up front about how they feel comfortable with it being used. If you are going to use AI assisted technology in the creation of a proposal for grant funding, so say it's for the National Science Foundation, you need to make sure that you are acknowledging that within the description of that proposal. NSF in particular requires data management plans to understand data security and sharing, and that extends to evaluation data. And so, if the evaluation team intends to use AI assisted tools, it needs to be included in that data management plan. It also depends on the institution that you're working with, both as the evaluation team and as the client or the project team, because we are seeing that more institutions and organizations are implementing a very specific policy on how they think AI can and cannot be used, what platforms should or should not be used. So I think that right now it kind of feels, it's still considered new and we're still figuring out what the ethical implications are for evaluation. But I think that we're going to start to see that more and more. So my go-to would just be transparency, be very upfront, ask people about their feelings or um, policies towards the use of it.
Thank you. Elizabeth had a little tip in the chat section. She just said that she has used Max QDA mainly, and they have helpful info on their website about how their data is handled. They're also located in Berlin, so they have to hold to the EU standards, which she thinks are a little bit stricter than the US requirements. So just wanted to throw a little tip out there from Elizabeth. Um, Candaya also thinks that she needs a workshop on how to generate productive prompts to feed into AI chatbots. So just putting that out into the
Yeah,
world,
me too. Me too.
right?
Maybe next year.
Okay.
Something our colleague said, I just want to share something that our colleague said when we were doing this run through was that they didn't realize that you could put in such detailed prompts into the AI chatbots. And I will say, I have been just amazed at like how much you can really converse with some of those AI tools just as if they're a person. I mean, every once in a while they come back with nonsense, but you're going to know that when they respond, right? So treat it as much as a person as you can. I think it gets to know you and has better responses.
Okay. And we did have a couple questions about that link to the workshop materials. So I'm going to go ahead. I can include that in the follow-up email as well. And that is for, the more in-depth practice that Lissa was talking about from their conference presentation. So I'll make sure that that goes out in the email with your links to this webinar and recording.
Thanks, Samantha.
And that's actually the end of our
Okay.
questions today. So thank you all for joining us, and we hope you'll take our feedback survey and join us in the future. And thank you so much, Lissa and Brianna.
Thank you all.
Thank you all for joining. Appreciate it.